From Agerpoint, I'm James Kotecki, and this is the Point Cloud. My guest today is Howard Yana Shapiro, one of the most respected voices in agriculture and agroforestry. He's the former Chief Agricultural Officer at Mars. He's a distinguished senior fellow at World Agroforestry, and basically he's the holder of so many career distinctions and accolades. It's probably best to just let him speak for himself to let you know why he's on the show. Howard, welcome to the Point Cloud. So glad to finally be chatting with you.
It's great to be here today, James. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So I wanted to hype you up in the introduction, obviously, but how do you see yourself? Are you a scientist, a business person? How do you see how you move through the world?
When one thinks about what one gets the chance to do, whether you're working in a business that's privately held or publicly held, or in academia, there's a certain amount of freedom that you're allowed. And I've been very fortunate to have an excessive amount of freedom to think about visionary issues that could impact the world. Sometimes it's a 5-minute conversation which launches something that lasts dozens and dozens of years. Sometimes it's just someone says you should go try and find something, in this case, the giant corn in Oaxaca, Mexico, in Totontepec. Sometimes it's a young professor at a 5-minute presentation at a Dean's Council meeting at the University of California, Davis, that launches a major issue on fulfilling the failings of nutrition, trying to end chronic hunger and malnutrition in Africa. One never knows what's going to spawn an idea. It's fortunate when you have either the financial wherewithal or the connectivity to be able to take these visionary ideas and find the collegial or collaborative group of people that you can associate with that can take an idea and then take it all the way through to the field or to the lab or whatever is the methodology necessary to get that happening, to actually make it come true. So some people call me a visionary. I think that's an oversimplification because I like to be in the field. So I'm a field person as well. I spend much of my time in the field, whether it's with trees or row crops or broadacre crops. So there's this immersion that I've had that I've been fortunate enough to do, including my own farms for decades, where I was able to observe things that most people don't get a chance to observe.
You mentioned having an impact, and you've certainly had a huge impact on the field of agriculture, agroforestry, and beyond. Were you drawn to agriculture and food first, and then you started realizing the impact that you and that the impact that that industry can have? Or did you literally look around for where's the place that I can make the biggest impact, and you found agriculture through that?
I mean, it's a multi-layered answer to your question. I came from an Eastern European family, Jewish family, that knew hunger at a very high rate. When they came to the United States, one of the things I wanted to make sure was they were never hungry again. It seems like a funny thing to say, but they farmed a small farm on Long Island. And then part of the family had a animal production facility outside of Syracuse where they raised all the grain and fattened cattle so that they would have food for themselves. And it wasn't so much that taught me what I know today, but it brought to me a kind of sense of understanding the patterns that you see in agriculture from a very young age. I remember 5 years old being in the field and looking around and kind of thinking, well, the wind kind of blows this way or the water flows this way in the fields. And you start to pick up small pieces and then you start to put it together as a system. And when you understand the patterns that make up the systems, even at a young age, you see things that you remember at old age. And it sort of influenced my entire perspective. The idea that, is it possible really to produce food resiliently? Is it possible to understand the issues that are surrounding that, whether it's climatically or otherwise? And then what can one do to interface with that entire proposition through annual crops, perennial crops, or tree crops?
Do you have This is a loaded question, and we don't have enough time. I could make the entire podcast just about the question I'm about to ask. So we're looking for a short answer if possible. But do you have kind of a highlight version, a highlight reel in your head of some of the things that you're proudest about in your career, just to let some people in our audience know some of the things that you've done? You mentioned finding giant corn. Obviously, your work with Mars and chocolate is legendary as well. Do you just have some things that you're especially proud of that can kind of paint a picture for folks about more about what you've done?
I would say the two keystone words are uncommon collaborations. And when I say that, nothing can be done by yourself. It takes cross-disciplinary activity. When I was at Mars and we decided, with the permission of the family, enthusiasm of the family, to do the cacao genome, which was important to substantiate how we were going to have a sustainable business going into the future, I understood that it was important not only to us as an institution, Mars Incorporated, but it was also important to all of the farmers around the world, 4.5, 5 million smallholders. And if we gave that information to their national research institutions from the genome and made it accessible, free, and we helped train them to utilize that, we could see a beginning of a shift in how to deal with all the problems of yield, pest and disease, climatic resilience of that crop. And having done that was a landmark for me. But simultaneously, I was working in agroforestry. Simultaneously, from 1980 to 2018, I worked on the nitrogen-fixing maize. There was periods when I worked on nitrogen-fixing rice, but it was always this uncommon collaboration. On the maize, it was Alan Bennett, Alan Van Dyne's colleagues at UC Davis, and on the nitrogen-fixing rice, it was Eduardo Blumwald at UC Davis. So having been located while at Mars onto the campus of UC Davis, an extraordinary opportunity was offered to me to work with some of the best minds in the world. And then in Africa, meeting with ministers of agriculture and understanding what they needed. And then beginning the African Orphan Crops Consortium with Rita Mumm and Alan Van Dynes to help end chronic hunger and malnutrition causing stunting in Africa. Again, a collaboration of over 40 institutions working together. And when I use the word institutions, it's governments, it's international institutions, it's environmental institutions, it's technical institutions. And you realize that there is this camaraderie amongst collaborators that nothing can stop you when you know you're on the right path. And so it's been this notion of finding the people, attracting them maybe, and then working together with them. And it's always for the greater good. It's understanding that we're trying to make the world better than we received it, which people talk about all the time. And then as I got older, it was understanding the subtleties between these uncommon collaborations and what you could accomplish and how you take on a problem on a massive scale, as opposed to individually working in an ivory tower for 20 years. It's building these collaborations, cross-disciplinary activities, international, and really putting it down and doing it day after day after day, and not just coming up with an idea and saying, this is a great idea, but really following through. I don't do the lab work in many of these cases. That's not my specialty. It's maybe thinking of the problems, working with the genius scientists and agriculturalists and forestry people that know the field better than I do, but I can act as a catalyst and bring it all together. And when someone says vision, it's many people's visions. It's this notion of chagruska in the Andes, where in order to make sure you have something, you plant many types of beans together, so something will occur. Bringing all these people together, whether it's technical people or economics people or sociologists or anthropologists, or the mix with the plant breeders really changes what you're delivering as a product. And so that's been very interesting to me. But I've been really fortunate to live on a technology curve. And when you live on a technology curve, what you thought was impossible, couldn't even think of, in 1980, it's commonplace in 2023.
You used the word visionary a few times during this conversation, and maybe that's the way that people think of you, and that's some of the way that you think of your work. But what I'm kind of hearing from you is the idea that all of us can be visionaries in a way, because all of us can help to shape that vision for the future. Does that resonate with you?
It is. And, I've lived a charmed life, if you will, because I was in an institution where creativity was accepted, and I had the financial wherewithal behind me to initiate some of these projects and to really move things forward. And when it's self-serving, it's very obvious. When one is selfless, it's also very obvious. And it's better to be in the second category, where you don't have to own anything. You don't have to make it your own. In the case of the nitrogen fixing maize, we wrote a Nagoya protocol with access to benefit sharing and informed consent with the community, so that one day when there is a nitrogen fixing maize based on these principles, that community will share in the financial benefits of that, and they'll do things with that money which will help their communities. The academic world will have it, the private world will have it, but it's this notion of sharing. So that was very important to me too, to be able to actually put down that we do have this protocol that was necessary to do something correctly. So it's also about being able to never look back and say, I didn't do that correctly. Somehow it was not done properly with the permissions, which you don't have to do. I mean, it's easy enough just to do it right from the start.
So we have looked back at a few of the highlights of your career. And I think for folks listening and watching these conversations, I think we've established that you are well qualified to speak about what's coming next and to paint us some visions for the future. In a previous speech and presentation that you give, you talked about how computing, analysis, and genetics, these three fields are converging to change the way that we approach agriculture, really to change the way that we approach biology. Can you give us the quick synopsis of that idea?
When I look back, 1980, and I look forward, 2023, the leaps in technology have been so dramatic. What you can put on a chip. When you think about the Sony Walkman in the early days, these clunky things, the early computers that were the size of a school bus with punch cards, and what we have today in a modern computer or a modern cell phone, or almost any modern utensil that we take for granted every day. This has all been based on this ability to put more and more information into a smaller space. So this notion of chips, what we could do, analytics, the cost of doing something. The first human genome was vastly expensive, more than $1 billion if we added up all the externalities. My friends at BGI in Shenzhen, China, are proposing $100 genome for an individual. So the curve that's happened and the cost of that is so dramatic that almost nothing can't be done with analytics today. The cost of a sequence, the cost of using a mass spec and analyzing that to get the information has precipitously dropped. So when you add all these pieces together, you end up with something that's called, in my mind, biology even over chemistry, which is a phrase that one of my friends, Matthias Berninger, came up with for a paper he wrote. And it's the fact that with all these tools, what we have done artificially might be able to be done now biologically. And then if you want to really sort of take it to the final level, DeepMind a few years ago offered the ability to look at every protein that we know in nanoseconds. It was called the AlphaFold Project. Before, it took a PhD student 5 years to do one protein, to analyze it and really understand it. So let's say there's 2 million times 5 years. You do the mathematics. How many years would that take to do that? Now it's a fingertip. So all of that's in front of me. Can I use it all? No, I personally can't. I'm not smart enough. But if you know the people and build the community of collaborators, then almost anything is possible. Soil analytics. Used to go to a wet lab, it'd take weeks and months, and there was inaccuracies. And if you sent 4 of the same samples to the same lab, you got 4 different results. Now you can use mid-IR and near-IR, like the World Agroforestry does in their soil lab. And in 50 seconds with a dry sample, you can get all the information, the first 96 elements of the periodic table. Did I ever think that would even be possible? There's even a backpack model. So it's the shrinkage of all this technology at our fingertips. And there's even sequencers. Let me reach across the table here. There's even sequencers that are this small. This is an Oxford nanopore sequencer. You put your sample in here, you plug it in the USB port of your computer, and you can sequence very high quality sequences. Never did anyone think that you'd be able to put your sequencer in your pocket and go out into the field. So the ability of all of this to focus in a very short time frame into information, never, ever, ever that I think was possible. You know, we used to walk into the fields with a notepad and take handwritten notes. And we would walk for hours, going up and down the rows of maize or tomatoes or trees, just looking at what's going on. Now we have this ability, using machine learning, to do something that's very, very different, to take images and capture them and really move forward with analytics that we never had before, or with ground truthing, drones, and satellites. We have this new opportunity that never before did I ever think that we would have the ability to make these kind of decisions.
It sounds like in the answer to that question, you're referencing some of the work that we're doing at Agerpoint with mobile device capture of trees and plants and the natural world. What is it that excites you about Agerpoint? And I would be curious also to know what's your definition of what Agerpoint is doing and how it fits into this broader system.
Remember, we were talking earlier, walking in the field with a pad of paper, taking notes. I was pretty good for the first 3 or 4 hours. About the 5th hour, I was getting bored. About the 7th hour, I was probably missing much of what I was supposed to be observing as a young kid walking the fields. It's just natural. It's human nature. Enthusiasm early on, and 8 hours later, less enthusiastic. A tool like the Agerpoint capture takes away all of that human frailty. You walk down a row of crops or trees or vines, you're capturing 100% of what you want to capture intellectually, but you were missing. So this device gives you that opportunity to make a decision that is much better than we made before. Imperfect, because a system like this, Agerpoint, is constantly refining and getting better and better and better. More data goes in. More data is taken out. And the ability with this complexity of data to analyze it and give you back in short order information, whether it's about nutrition in the plant, whether it's about disease on the leaf, whether it's about yield, whether it's about a tree and estimating the above ground carbon. I could go on for hours talking about the capability of these tools that I hope they'll reach in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because it's constantly evolving. Predicting becomes very important. Understanding at an intimate level in a way that the human eye is pretty good at, but you miss things. The speed with which you can make the analytics, or you can make the capture to give you the analytics, is unparalleled than anything I've ever seen before. And I've seen it demonstrated in parts of Africa. I've seen it demonstrated in California. I tried it out in the Philippines recently and in Papua New Guinea on some projects I'm on. I'm going to try it out again. Or when I say try it out, I'm using it. The word try it out sounds like it's an experiment. We're thinking this is no longer an experiment. This is actually fact-based information, which gives you the decision making that you can't have. So beyond all the patterns that I see, beyond all the complexity I see, now I'm having verification and more with a tool like this.
I'm so excited that you're excited about the technology, not just Agerpoint, but all of this technology coming together. Obviously, this is happening at a time of significant global challenges in terms of climate change, in terms of food security. Uh, what do you most worry about? And then how does your optimism and your concern, how do they balance? Are you more optimistic? Are you more concerned? How does that shake out for you?
But I think we have to be optimistic that there is a sense of discovery and then taking those discoveries and putting them into the field and then making them for the benefit of the largest number of people possible. It doesn't exclude climate science, it doesn't include ocean science, it doesn't include anything. But my work has been on plants, small plants, all the way up to big trees, the entire world that encompasses all the biodiversity. I have to think about in forests, first, what are the environmental services that are given by that system? Agerpoint helps me make some of those decisions. Satellite analysis on the landscape makes other decisions. So it's this combination of information which gives me optimism. And then having formed the African Orphan Crops Consortium to work on 101 food crops, which is the backbone of the diet in Africa, to improve them nutritionally. And when you tell someone you're working on nutrition in crops, they say, but how about yield? Well, we're working on yield too, and climatic resilience, and pest and disease resistance, and water and nutrient use efficiency. But these are not crops that any of the big companies will work on. These are the backbone crops, not the big 10, things that most of us have never heard about before. But this is what you eat every day in Africa. This is what people want to eat, the majority of the population. So if we fix that, and this is my role in Africa, if we help fix that with the governments and the plant scientists and the NGOs together, we've done a service. But then something else comes along and you learn about the issues of aflatoxin. So now you have to think about aflatoxin in this food system. And this is where technology called CRISPR comes in. And CRISPR, which won the Nobel Prize a few years ago with Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier for their discoveries, is an application that is a democratized technology that we're teaching in Africa now, so that problems that would seem insuperable in the past seem conquerable now. Again, optimism. Now, it's easy to be pessimistic. One just has to look around the world and want to crawl in your own hole and pull the cover over. But I don't think that's really what a trained scientist or an ecologist or an environmentalist or an anthropologist, anyone who's involved in the world around them, really can do. I mean, you have to take the knowledge you have, move it forward towards visionary thinking, take that and find the people who will help you execute, and then find the technologies which become the backbone, whether it's sequencing or something like Agerpoint, which allows us to pick up information that we never were able to pick up before. And I don't have to be there. A person with a smartphone can be there. And that allows me to help them from a distance because I can't live all the places I'd like to be at the same time.
You mentioned government as a piece of the collaborative puzzle involved in solving some of these challenges. I think some people, around the United States and probably around the world are frustrated with government's ability to actually respond to some of the challenges that we face in a expeditious way. And so when we look at technology, yeah, the pace is rapidly evolving and the increase is phenomenal. When we look at government, it seems like some of these problems can appear to be more intractable. Do you believe that we can get where we need to go, even if policymakers and government don't really step up and don't get their act together? Or are they critical to the puzzle here?
They're a part of the puzzle. It's individuals coming up with solutions to problems in every part of the world, and then engaging their communities, and then engaging their regions, and then engaging the countries. So one can go to speak to a minister of agriculture or a secretary of agriculture or rural affairs or forestry in many, many places. But then they're asking you, they look at you in the eye and say, okay, and it sounds crass, what are you going to do for me? Well, we're going to work on 101 food crops, the backbone of Africa, or we're going to work on improving the cacao tree for resilience against climate change, pest and disease, and increase the yield for the benefit of the farmers. Or you're in Asia and you're talking with your colleagues at places like the Beijing Genomic Institute or the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, which are collaborators on the same thing, ending chronic hunger and malnutrition around the world. And they know that you've worked on a particular mechanism to make nitrogen-fixing rice, which is the largest commodity eaten every day in the world. Rice is it. And institutions like IRRI in the Philippines under Gerd of Kush released IR64 rice, which is eaten by more people than anybody else. Imagine that legacy. You're feeding more people in the world with something that you worked on for decades. And now you can say, I'm going to add nitrogen to it. And then you can also say, I'm going to add perenniality to it. And 20 years ago, that was science fiction. But today, that's potential. And so if we take the potential and put it together in a holistic manner or in a rational manner and distribute it to the people that need it the most, then the change of optimism is possible. Perennial rice is not forever. It's only 4 or 5 years. But think about the amount of labor that's saved by not having to plant rice every year by hand, the way it's done in many parts of the world, whether it's the men, the women, the children in the fields that are doing this. And then say, I'm going to replace most of the nitrogen needed for that crop. And in many places, they don't add any nitrogen because it's not available, either through supply chains or costs. That changes everything again. So it's this ability to now start to think, what can I do? How do I put it together? Where does it all come together? And you're fortunate if you can build those sorts of connectivity, the collaborations that are necessary to get this done, and then spread it as widely as possible, as quickly as possible, for the benefit of as many people as possible.
On the consumer side, when I think about someone at home preparing a meal, is the future of agriculture going to feel significantly different to them than the present does now in terms of, I don't know, diversity of new things to eat or significantly healthier foods? And or is it going to be a revolution that takes place more behind the scenes, if you will, where the consumer's not noticing the difference, but that's because there's been so much technological innovation behind the scenes to enable them to continue to live the life that they have and the eating habits that they've had?
Well, the consumer, I don't know that they can understand the entire supply chain in most cases because it's so complicated. You pick up something from Argentina, you pick up something from Senegal, you pick up something from Vietnam, and it all gets together and you make something out of it. Does the average consumer actually know that? Or their feed comes from maize that feeds the chicken, which gives the eggs. Do they really understand what it all takes in a supply chain? Certainly, a portion of the population understands that. Many parts of the world, they're close to every aspect of it, so they know what goes on. But if you go into a supermarket or a grocery store around the world, there's a miasma of choices of almost in every category. And do you really know where your tomato came from? Do you know that California produces more tomato than any other place in the world? And many of them get shipped around the world in paste or diced or crushed to be made into pasta sauces in many places. We don't know where everything comes from. I think in the future, as is going to be mandated probably by the European Union, you will need to know the entire supply chain. You'll need to know who grew your carrot, who grew your tomato, who grew your lettuce, who grew the wheat to make your bun for your plant-based burger, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
All that information is going to be possible in the future because of advance in technology about how we look at a field, at the Agerpoint taken all the way through the supply chain, the Agerpoint perspective, or is it going to be blockchain, which would be mandated by the European Union? What are you going to want to know about a crop that is making up something that you're eating? Well, you probably want to know that it wasn't destructive environmentally. We didn't cut down trees. We didn't pollute waterways. There's going to be a series of things that a citizen will be available to know if they want to know it. But I think that we're learning to be smarter all the time. And we're learning to trust the technologies that are available to us to make sure that what we want is delivered to us on the kitchen table and into the nutritious life of our children and our families. So in the past, we talked about yield per acre in the entire supply chain. I think the shift is coming to nutrition per acre. And one day soon, we'll know about how much nutrition is generated and what happens to that in a vast feeding system. Does it go to animals? Does it come to processed food? Does it come to us directly? We'll start to have information about that. But it all begins fundamentally making the life of the forester, the rancher, the farmer, the agriculturalist easier to make good decisions, which is why all these breakthrough technologies in the field are so important. If you can understand your soil, if you can understand what's going on with your crop, if you can make decisions as a farmer, as a rancher, as a forester, quicker, better, for the benefit of many, then you start to really understand what a whole system analytics looks like. And that's what we're going to, I think, in almost everything we do on a daily basis.
Well, Howard, we are out of time. We could have talked much longer. In fact, we didn't even get to touch on your motorcycle enthusiasm, which I hope to have you back on the show and include that and many more topics in our next conversation. But Howard Yana Shapiro, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and being our guest on The Point Cloud.
Thank you, James. It's been my pleasure to speak with you today.
Well, that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. Please like us, rate us 5 stars, subscribe, tell your friends, and make sure to follow Agerpoint on social media where the conversation continues. From Agerpoint, I am James Kotecki, and this is The Point Cloud.